The little house stood on the edge of the village, its whitewashed walls tinted gold by the setting sun. The day had been long, but now the world was softening, slowing, surrendering to dusk. Shadows of the plum tree in the courtyard stretched across the small veranda, their thin fingers swaying with the wind. Inside, the air smelled faintly of wood smoke and chamomile tea. The old clock on the wall ticked patiently, each beat marking time in a house that seemed to live outside of time. At a round wooden table, worn smooth by decades of use, sat Elena. Her hands rested on the table's surface. They were hands carved by years of labor, wrinkled, veined, fragile-looking, yet strong in their own way. They moved slowly, gracefully, as if aware that each motion carried memory. A strand of the silver hair had slipped from her bun, brushing against her cheek as she bent slightly forward. Her eyes, soft, pale, with a glimmer of tired light, watched the window where the last of the evening poured in. Across from her sat Sophia, only 9 years old, her small legs dangling from the chair, never quite reaching the floor. She had been tracing circles on the wood with her fingertip, but now her gaze lifted, curious and expectant. "Baba," she whispered, using the old word for grandmother. "Why do you always sit so still when the sun goes down?" Elena smiled faintly. The smile was tender but heavy, as though it carried more than Sophia could understand. "Because, my little bird," Elena replied, her voice low, warm, and roughened by age. "The evening is when memories come to visit." Sophia tilted her head. "Memories, yes. They knock on the window with the light." Eleanor lifted her hand, pointing toward the slanted beams coming in. "When I was your age, I used to sit just like this, listening to my own grandmother. She told me that at sunset, the world grows thinner and the past slips through. I never forgot." Sophia leaned closer, resting her chin on her hands. Her eyes, wide, dark, innocent, shone with curiosity. "Can you tell me one of your memories?" she asked softly, as though she didn't want to scare them away. Elena looked at her granddaughter for a long moment, her gaze both present and far away. She reached out across the table, laying her hand gently over Sophia's smaller one. The child's skin was warm, smooth, untouched by time. Elena's was cool, lined, and trembled faintly. The contrast made her heart ache with both love and sorrow. "I will," she said finally. "But remember, some memories are heavy, some may make you sad." Sophia nodded quickly. "That's okay. I want to know." The grandmother drew a long, deep breath. Her eyes lowered, as if searching inside the dim corners of her soul. Then, slowly, her voice began to weave its way back through the years. Flashback. Exterior, village. Day, 1940s. The screen of memory opened, a wide dirt road stretching through a small village. The houses were humble, roofs patched with straw and tin. Chickens scattered across the path as a young girl ran barefoot, her dark braids bouncing against her shoulders. This girl was Eleanor, aged 9. She carried a small basket of apples, holding them close to her chest, as if protecting treasure. The sun was harsh, and the air was filled with dust. Yet her face glowed with a kind of determined joy. The sound of boots thundered in the distance. Soldiers marching down the road. The child stopped, froze, clutching her basket tighter. Her eyes darted to the houses. Doors slammed shut, curtains pulled. The village grew silent, save for the echo of those boots. Young Elena pressed herself against a wall, watching. The apples trembled in her arms. Present. In Turyi house. Evening. Elena's eyes were far away, her voice low. When I was your age, Sophia, the world was not so peaceful. There was war. Sophia's brow furrowed. War? Yes. Terrible men walked our roads. They took food, they took homes, they took lives. I learned very early that nothing is truly you. Yes, terrible men walked our roads. They took food, they took homes, they took lives. I learned very early that nothing is truly yours. Not even the apples in your hand. She looked down at her wrinkled hands, flexing them gently as though still feeling the weight of that small basket. What happened? Sophia whispered. Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. One day, I lost more than apples. Her gaze lingered on the child, uncertain how much to reveal. The room seemed quieter. The tick of the clock louder. Flashback. Exterior fields. Dusk. A small wooden wagon rattled over uneven ground. Inside sat Elena's family. Her mother with weary eyes. Her father silent, gripping the reins. And her younger brother, no older than 5, asleep in her mother's lap. They were leaving their home. Smoke rose behind them from the village, houses burning. Elena's small hands clutched the edge of the wagon. She turned once, looking back at the place she had known her whole life. Her lips trembled. The sound of crying filled the air. It was not hers. It was her mother's. Present. In Tuyen house. Evening. Elena's voice cracked. We had to leave. Everything we knew was gone in one night. My mother tried to be strong, but I saw her cry. It was the first time I realized that even mothers can break. Sophia's hand slipped into her grandmother's. She squeezed gently, as though offering strength her small body barely contained. Elena looked at her and smiled, faintly, brushing Sophia's hair back from her forehead. You see, my little bird, she whispered, life tests us when we least expect it. But we carry on, because we must. Sophia's eyes glistened. Were you scared? Terrified? Elena admitted, her voice almost a breath. But I also learned courage. Sometimes, courage is nothing more than taking the next step, even when your heart wants to stop. The silence that followed was filled with the chirping of crickets outside, the faint rustle of leaves. Sophia sat very still, staring at her grandmother as though memorizing every word. Tell me more, she said finally, her voice small but insistent. Elena exhaled slowly. The light in the room dimmed further, the evening drawing in like a blanket. I will, she said. But we must go slowly. Memories are like heavy trunks. You cannot open them all at once, or they will crush you. Sophia nodded, her little face solemn. The grandmother rose slowly, her joints stiff, and walked to the cupboard. She brought out 2 cups of tea, one steaming, fragrant with chamomile, the other slightly cooler for Sophia. She set them on the table. the porcelain clinking softly. As they sipped together, the past lingered in the air, unspoken, but alive. The clock ticked. The sun fell lower. Shadows deepened. The story had only begun. The crickets outside sang louder as night began to settle. The small lamp on the table cast a circle of amber light, leaving the corners of the room in shadow. The old wood beams creaked softly. As though listening too, Sophia cupped her tea, blowing gently on the surface. Her wide eyes never left her grandmother. Elena sat back, her wrinkled hands folded in her lap. Her gaze was steady but heavy with memory. "You want to know more?" she said, almost to herself. Sophia nodded, her braids bouncing. "Yes. What happened after you left your home?" Elena sighed, the sound half weary, half resigned. "We wandered. For weeks, maybe months. Time becomes strange when you are a child in war. Days blur. Hunger sharpens. Cold becomes your companion. You forget games. You forget laughter. You remember only survival." Her eyes lowered. But there were moments of beauty too, even in the darkest nights. Flashback. Forest path. Day, 1940s. A narrow wagon rolled slowly along a forest road. The horse was thin, ribs showing. The family huddled in the back, wrapped in tattered blankets. Young Elena sat at the edge, her legs dangling. Her stomach growled, but her eyes were drawn upward. Through the canopy, sunlight streamed in golden shafts, piercing the green darkness. Dust and pollen swirled in the beams like tiny glowing stars. For a moment she forgot the hunger. She forgot the soldiers. She reached her hand into the light, letting the specks dance across her palm. She smiled. Then her mother's hand pulled her back. "Stay close, Lena," she whispered. "Don't fall." Elena nodded, but her gaze lingered on the light. Even then, she was learning. Beauty survives, even in ruin. Present. Into your house. Evening. Elena's voice softened. "I remember that light. Sometimes, Sophia, you must hold on to small things, like sunlight through the trees. They keep you alive when the world is cruel." Sophia leaned forward eagerly. "What else did you see?" The grandmother hesitated, her eyes clouding. She lifted her teacup, sipping slowly before setting it down. "I saw hunger," she said quietly. "I saw fear, and I saw how easily life can be taken away." Flashback. Exterior, makeshift camp. Night, a clearing in the forest. Families huddled around small fires, flames carefully hidden under stones and pots to keep them from being seen from afar. Shadows of weary faces flickered on the trees. Elena sat close to her mother, clutching a piece of dry bread so small it fit in her fist. She nibbled slowly, trying to make it last. Beside her, her little brother coughed weakly, his body thin. Her mother pressed him close, rocking him gently, humming an old lullaby that sounded broken in her throat. Elena's father returned from the darkness with nothing in his hands. His eyes were hollow, ashamed. That night, the stars overhead seemed cold and distant. Present. Into your house. Evening. Elena's voice trembled. "We lived on scraps. A potato split 4 ways. a crust of bread that had to last the day. My little brother grew weaker each week. He was so small, Sophia. His eyes were large and dark, like yours, but they grew too heavy for him to hold open. Her granddaughter's lip quivered. She reached out, holding Elena's hand with both of hers now, as though trying to protect her from the memory. Elena smiled faintly, but her eyes glistened. He didn't survive, my little bird. One night he closed his eyes and never opened them again. The words hung in the air, heavy as stone. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. Baba! The grandmother stroked her cheek gently. It's all right. He is part of me still. His laughter, short as it was, lives here. She pressed a hand against her heart. That is what loss teaches us. Nothing truly disappears if we carry it with love. Sophia buried her face against her grandmother's arm, clinging tightly. Elena kissed the top of her head, letting silence fill the room for a moment. The crickets outside sang louder as night began to. Flashback. Exterior riverbank. Day. Elena, now slightly older, crouched by a river with her mother. They washed rags of clothing in the freezing water. Her mother's hands were raw and red, but she worked without pause. Elena watched her, silently noticing the lines of pain around her mouth. At last she whispered, Mama, will we ever go home? Her mother paused, staring at the water as if searching for an answer there. Finally, she shook her head slightly. Home is wherever we are alive. Elena pressed the wet cloth to her chest, shivering. She didn't fully understand, but the words carved themselves into her. Present. Interior house. Evening. That was the lesson I carried, Elena told Sophia, her voice firm now. Home is not walls or roofs. It is not land or things. Home is where love still breathes, even when everything else is gone. Sophia thought about this, her small brow furrowed in concentration. Then she asked softly, was it very hard to believe that? Elena laughed gently, though the sound was tinged with sadness. Yes. Sometimes I didn't believe it at all. Sometimes I only wanted to sleep and never wake. But my mother, she never let me. She kept me alive with her strength, and when she faltered, I tried to keep her alive with mine. That is how we survived. By holding each other. She squeezed Sophia's hand. The way you hold me now. Sophia's eyes widened. She held tighter. The lamp flickered faintly as the evening deepened into night. The smell of tea lingered in the room, warm and fragile. Elena leaned back, her eyelids heavy with the weight of memory. Yet her voice, though cracked, carried a quiet power. There is more to tell, she whispered, much more. But tonight you have learned the first truths. That beauty survives even in darkness, that love is stronger than hunger, and that loss never leaves us. But neither does love. Sophia rested her head against her grandmother's arm, silent now, letting the words sink into her young heart. The old clock ticked on. The window showed only darkness, and in the little house, 2 generations sat bound together by memory, sorrow, and a quiet flame of hope. The lamp burned lower now, the oil inside crackling faintly. Outside, the wind brushed against the shutters, whispering like an old friend at the door. Sophie, though tired, refused to close her eyes. She leaned on the table, her cheek resting in her palm, watching her grandmother as though afraid the story would vanish if she blinked. Elena's gaze lingered on the window, where her reflection stared back faintly in the glass. A face lined with years, a map of both grief and survival. "You have heard of my childhood," she said slowly. "But children do not stay children forever. Even after war, the heart learns to grow again." Sophia's lips curved in a sleepy smile. "Like flowers after winter?" Elena's chest warmed. "Yes, my little bird. Exactly like that." Flashback. Exterior village square. Day, 1950s. The war had ended. Smoke no longer rose from houses, though scars of it still marked the walls. The square was noisy with voices again, with chickens, with the sound of hammers repairing roofs. Elena, now 17, walked through the square carrying a basket of bread. Her hair was long, braided neatly, her eyes deep with both youth and old sorrow. As she passed the well, she nearly collided with a boy. He was tall, with sleeves rolled to the elbows, skin tanned from work, and eyes the color of green fields after rain. His arms were full of firewood, but one log slipped and clattered onto the stones. "Ah!" Eleanor bent down quickly to pick it up. Their hands touched over the same piece of wood. For a moment, time slowed. He looked at her and smiled. A shy, uneven smile that lit up his face. "Thank you," he said. His voice was warm, steady. Elena lowered her eyes quickly, placing the log back in his arms. "You're welcome." When she walked away, her cheeks burned though the air was cool. That night, she found herself thinking of his smile. Present, use night. Sophia's eyes sparkled. "Was he your first love?" Elena chuckled softly. "Yes. His name was Mikhail. He was kind. He had a laugh that made even the saddest hearts lighter. And he carried the same scars of war that I did. That's why, I think, we understood each other without words." She lifted her cup of tea, though it had gone cold now. "We were young. We had nothing. No money, no comfort, no certainty. But we had dreams." Flashback. Exterior. Meadow. Evening. Elena and Mikhail sat in the tall grass, the sky painted orange and pink. He played with a piece of straw between his teeth, lying back with his hands behind his head. She sat cross-legged beside him, hugging her knees, watching the clouds. "What will you do, Lena?" he asked. She frowned. "Do? In life? What do you dream of?" She hesitated. Dreams had always seemed dangerous, fragile things. "I don't know. Maybe to have a house that no one can burn down. A place where children can laugh without fear." Mikhail turned his head, smiling at her. "Then I will build it for you." Her cheeks flushed. "You can't promise that." "I can," he said firmly. Rolling onto his side, looking straight into her eyes. "And I will." She laughed softly, but deep inside something bloomed. Fragile, golden, unstoppable. Present. Interior house, night. Elena's eyes glowed faintly, remembering. "We stole hours together. In the fields, by the river, under the stars. It was a happiness so pure it frightened me. After so much darkness, I wondered if it could last." Her voice grew quieter. I was right to wonder. Flashback. Kstadjde village road. Night. Rain poured from the sky, drenching the earth. Elena ran down the muddy road, her dress plastered to her legs, her braid undone. Her breath came in gasps. At the edge of the village, people had gathered. A broken cart lay on its side, wheels shattered. A horse cried out weakly, trapped. And beside it, Mikhail. He lay still, his shirt stained dark, his face pale. A group of men tried to lift the wood from his chest, shouting over the storm. Elena pushed forward, falling to her knees in the mud beside him. Mikhail? No, no. His eyes flickered open, weak. For a moment he saw her, and his lips formed her name without sound. Then his eyes closed again. The rain fell harder. Her hands pressed against him, desperate, trembling. But nothing she did could hold him in the world. Present. In Tekun house, night. Elena's voice broke. She placed her hand over her mouth, as though the memory still silenced her. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. He died. Elena nodded slowly. So young, so foolish an accident. He was not taken by war, not by hunger, but by something as ordinary as a broken cart on a rainy night. She swallowed hard, her throat tight. That is how cruel life can be. It does not wait for grand battles to wound you. Sometimes it strikes in the most ordinary of moments. Sophia crawled from her chair into her grandmother's lap, curling against her chest. Elena wrapped her arms around her, holding her close, her chin resting on Sophia's hair. I thought I would never laugh again, Elena whispered. I thought my heart was buried with him in the mud that night. But life went on. Somehow, it always does, Sophia sniffled. But didn't it hurt too much? Yes, Elena said. It hurt every day, but pain does not erase love. His smile still lives in me, even now. When I see the evening light on the meadow, I hear his laugh again. She stroked Sophia's back gently. That is the gift of love, my little bird. Even when we lose it, it never truly leaves us. The lamp flickered, shadows dancing along the walls. The night deepened, but the warmth between them seemed to keep the darkness at bay. Elena closed her eyes for a moment, listening to the child's breathing, steady against her. There were more stories to tell, of hardship, of sacrifice, of resilience. But for now, the memory of Mikhail lingered in the air, tender and bittersweet.